Hello, Fight and Sight fans, viewers, and listeners. I am your guest co-host for the day, Reggie from Reggie in Law on TikTok. And as always with me is your host, Timmy B. Hi, Timmy. How are you?
How you doing, Reggie?
Good. Glad to be here again. And before we start, please take a moment to follow and subscribe on whatever platform you're using right now. And please leave a 5-star rating and comment. On today's episode, we are going to talk to a fighter who might actually be happy with his pay. A fighter and friends are probably going to the clink clink and a whole lot more. All right, Tim, hit it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Fight and Sight podcast. Let's talk.
Our guest today is a 16-fight veteran of the UFC, currently competing in the welterweight division, and comes to us following his incredible performance of the night, second-round stoppage of Andre Fialho at UFC 275. Born in Australia, this man has made some waves online recently by posting his comments about fighter pay, how it's not that bad, which is a topic we've talked to many times on this podcast to many different people. We are so happy to have him on. We're glad that he accepted to come on and chat. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podcast, Jake the Celtic Kid Matthews.
Yay.
How's it going, Jake?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Yourself?
Good. Thank you so much for joining the podcast. You, like I said in the intro, people were very shocked by your comments. We played some of your Instagram story on the podcast last week. Jake, I'm going to start it out. We often go to fans and get some fan questions. So one fan question we had right off the top to make sure that you're legit here. Has Dana paid you to make these tweets?
Definitely not. I want to start by saying if people didn't concern themselves with other people's pay and jump on Twitter so much, and they'd probably have a happier life themselves. I think people read too much into Twitter, and obviously from my side of things, there's only so much context I can put in a tweet. It's obviously limited in the amount of words we can use. So, but no, exactly. I'm like I mentioned, I'm not backpedaling or anything. I'm more than happy. I mean, everyone's relative, I guess, in regards to pay, where you come from, your hardship, how much work you've put in. But as a kid from, northern suburbs of Melbourne in Australia, I actually think the money I get paid to do what I do is ridiculous, and that's a kid who's coming from at the end of the day, I grew up, lower class in the suburbs, watched my parents work 2-3 jobs, struggled to put petrol in the car. So coming from that point of view, the money I get paid, it exceeds anything I ever thought I would get paid in my life.
That's amazing, Jake. Okay, before we get into the pay stuff a little bit more, though, when did you know you were going to become a fighter? Was that like your dream?
It wasn't, no. So I was playing Australian football. I played for about 9 years, very high level. Representative teams. Even made some bit of a higher level in football. And it got to a point where I wanted to stay fit during the off season. So I went along to a kickboxing class with my friend. Jumped in the class, one thing progressed to another, found jiu-jitsu and MMA. I actually did jiu-jitsu a little bit before with my dad, because he trained with the Gracies when they first came to Australia back in 1992, I believe. Nice. So that was actually before the UFC. My dad was training jiu-jitsu. So there's a little bit of an impact, from my old man as well. But yeah, it's about 3 months into training. There was a late notice fight came up, an amateur fight. I took it. Ended up winning by a head kick knockout.
Wow.
And I had no expectations when I first stepped into that fight. I still wanted to play football. I was just an Aussie kid who wanted to go and have a punch on, pretty much. So,
you'd give it a shot.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, so there was no pressure, no expectations. I was 16. I was fighting a 24, 25-year-old. Wow. And then I ended up kicking him in the head. First head kick ever from my life, and I knocked him out. And I don't know where it came from. Still to today, I can't touch my toes. That's how unflexible I am. But I managed to kick him. I managed to kick him in the head and knock him out. And from that instant, I just said I want to fight in the UFC. And my dad said, "Look, it's going to be hard, but if you want to do it, we'll support you." And that's the start of the journey. I pretty much dropped football that year. A lot of people weren't happy because they thought, I had the potential to get drafted. But at the end of the day, that was my dream, and I think I definitely made the right choice.
And just to be fair, the person that you were fighting was a normal-sized human being. They weren't very short.
They were normal. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we started, even though it was a long time ago, before the Octagon was in Melbourne, and before it was actually considered legal. Yeah, it was very grassroots, but it was still structured. We had weight classes and amateur fights, and most of my fights took place. We called it a shed. They said it was a basketball court, but it was pretty much a shed. Yeah.
Well, Jake, look at where you are now, my friend. I mean, you're on the Fight Insight podcast. So from those humble beginnings, you've now reached the echelon.
I've made it.
That's it. You've reached your goal, my friend. No, but in seriousness, you have been on multiple pay-per-view cards, right? So you're doing something right, because I'll tell you, I'm very shocked sometimes at like some of the fan favorites or the high-level fighters that are on these little fight nights that, maybe don't get such viewership, don't get the crowds, but you've been in pay-per-view after pay-per-view. I mean, that's been amazing for your career, right?
It has been, yeah. I mean, exactly what you said. I've done something right. I got into the UFC when I was 19. I think John Anik told me my last fight, he said the average fight career is about, I think it works out to about 2.5 fights and 12 months for a UFC fighter. So I've been in for about 9 years and had 16 fights. And that's taking into account about 2 years of layoffs through injury and surgeries and whatnot. And this is what I tell the younger guys. I said I've obviously done something right. I obviously have somewhat of a blueprint to have a long and prosperous career. And that's what everyone should be aiming for. We shouldn't be trying to get in. And because people are getting in the UFC younger these days, so we don't want to be getting in and out, having a few fights, and then when you're older, you can say, "Oh, I was a UFC fighter once upon a time." You want to make the most of your career and maximize it, and that's what I've done. So, like you said, we do have a method and a bit of a blueprint laid out. And we're actually going to kick off. It's not a management agency because I don't like to use that term. It's more mentorship and consultancy. But we're gonna actually help younger fighters. And I saw this morning that Joanna did an interview, and I don't know if she's doing the same thing, but she mentioned that she wants to help younger fighters and mentor them, because there isn't really a clear cut sort of blueprint for these young fighters to follow. And a lot of the time they'll get sucked into these management agencies, just like I did when I was younger. They throw around there you go. They throw around 6-figure this, 6-figure that. We manage this guy, this champ. And when it comes down to it, they get you nothing. They take 20% of your fight purse. And like I've mentioned before, I've paid upward of $70,000 in a year in management fees and got $0 in my account.
Sorry, your connection might have disconnected just a bit there. How much? What thousand?
It was upward of $70,000 in 12 months. Oh, it's probably just over 12 months, but I got $0, and then it was like, but you lost this last fight. You're Australian based. We're from America. These are points that should have been brought up at the start, and but it's all a learning curve. It's all trial and error. We've sorted it out now. I do what I call co-managing. So I've got one of my best mates, someone that I would trust with my kids. So I've brought him on board. He was an absolute beginner in terms of management. He's very staunch. He's Lebanese, so he's a very staunch businessman. So so he's got that going for him. But we learned and progressed together, and we learned the industry together. And now we've brought in probably $80,000 to $90,000 in the last 4 months in endorsements and sponsorships. So yeah, we can definitely make it work. And this is something that we also want to show these younger fighters, and hopefully reduce the financial limitations that stop fighters from progressing to the high levels in whatever sport it is. I feel that we have a lot of cases of like the best that never was, because guys have mortgages, they have to work full time, and that's obviously going to get in the way of being able to focus 100% on your career. So if we can try and alleviate some of that pressure on these younger fighters, hopefully we can see more, especially in Australia, we can see more Australians get to the UFC and get to the higher level of MMA.
That's amazing, Jake. And you've touched on so many different things I want to get to. But just to get back to the fighter pay, and we've had fighters on here that, off camera, on camera have said like, hey, I'm happy with pay. I've never actually had a UFC fighter come on that was outwardly disgruntled. But so you're saying, I know in your Instagram you kind of talked about, but you're saying that the fight pay isn't horrible. Is it because you have slowly been managing yourself or with the help of people, but managing so that your contract is better? I'm not asking for what your pay is, but is it that you kind of alluded in your Instagram story that, hey, like when you start out, you're starting out and you've got to build from there. And is that what you're saying? Like you have to take the time to leverage your pay to make it better?
Exactly. You have to look at it in the way that, like, I've seen, I'm not going to name any names, but I've seen people that have absolutely no business being in the UFC had their records against pub drunks and get to the UFC and within the space of 12 months. It's honestly, and these, like I said, these are not my words. These are the words of Sean Shelby. He says at every fight meeting before the fights, he goes, it's not hard to get to the UFC. And he's absolutely right. It's not hard to get to the UFC. The hard work starts when you get to the UFC. And people compare us to other sports. And I guess you can compare and you can't compare. These other team sport guys that get paid big contracts, they probably started playing when they were, 10 years of age. They played through high school. They had to obviously play at a high level to get a scholarship to a university. They had to go through the university process, the draft process. By the time they actually get to playing in the high, let's say NFL, for example, they've probably played 300-400 games.
Well, far more than that.
Well, there you go. I could literally take, and all the expenses that their family have probably put into them being able to play. I could take a naturally gifted fighter, give me a year of training and then a year of fighting, give him 4 or 5 fights against bums and get him to the UFC. Honestly, no, it's honestly that easy, and it's been done before. And especially if you've got a good manager with the gift of the gab, they can do that for you. Like, in my mind, that doesn't mean you're entitled to be getting paid millions. You have to earn your stripes when you're in the UFC. And like I said, these guys. Someone mentioned the other day, this basketball player gets paid $900,000 a year, a rookie. He played like 4 games that week. Recently, especially with COVID, but normally it's 2 to 3 fights a year for a fighter. So if you take my fight pay and I fight 30, 40 times a year, then I'd be getting paid upward of like 5-6 million a year. So if we were able to fight as frequently, then that works out. And also, these guys have the media obligations for the team sponsors, for their own sponsors. They're very busy. They're in between training, they're working. A lot of fighters in between training, they're going to the beach, they're smoking weed, they're playing video games. This is legit. They're playing video games.
I'm putting on your tweet here, Jake, that you said, don't sit on your Xbox every spare hour.
No, that's true. I mean, you might be making money doing that, the streaming side of things. I guarantee a lot of fighters aren't making enough money to justify sitting. So if you're going and training 2 times a day and then sitting on the couch in between or just bumming around, you can't expect to be making a lot of money. So this is where I say the fighters have to take some sort of account and go out and be active and get endorsements and sponsorships, because there is money out there. There's plenty of companies that have where the owners or the CEOs are fans of fighting, and they're more than happy to throw money at fighters. You just have to go out and be active and find them. And this is something else that in our business structure and our mentorship program, we want to teach guys how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's really important, Jake, because we had a young fighter who was fighting her first Bellator fight a couple weeks ago, Manuela Marcanetto from Italy. And we were talking to her about the sponsorship pay or, sponsor pay and stuff like that. And I said, like, you're going first fight into Bellator, would you have preferred to have like a deal like the UFC where it has the Venom deal, because at least you're guaranteed that money, however small it would be? And she was like, yeah, she's like, I can't find anything. Like, I'm paraphrasing. And she said it with a much nicer Italian accent, but she was saying like, I can't find money. So you're saying though, hey, there is money to be found. You got to grind for it. You got to work for it, but there's stuff out there.
There definitely is. I've seen amateur guys that are just, they're just savvy with marketing themselves on social media. There's amateur fighters that have more followers than most UFC fighters, just because they've hit the right content. They're consistent with their content and their social media, which again is a lesson that we want to teach our clients. So and if you've got the following, then you're able to get the sponsorship. Obviously, on the amateur sense, kids are easier to get because they're obviously prospects and they could be phenoms, and companies like to support kids from the ground up. But in regards to amateurs, a little bit harder. But for professionals, there's definitely sponsors out there. It just depends what they're doing to find those sponsors and how they're networking. Networking is the best thing you can do. From networking on social media, sending multiple messages every week, networking within you'll find sponsors within the gym that you train at. Go to the kids' classes, talk to the parents. One of those parents are going to own a company, or they're going to have a friend who owns a company, or they're going to have a friend who has a friend who owns a company. You know what I mean? And you just keep branching out. And I think fighters, without giving our method away too much, it all comes down to the offer that you're giving. So this is as far as the fighter's mind can fathom an offer. Oh, you give me $1,000 a month and I'll put up one post a week. It's not appealing to companies. So what they need to do is start looking at things they can add to their offer. It's not going to cost me money to add it to the offer, but it's going to add benefit to the offer. So I'll put up one post a week, for example, and I'll do an in-person training event for your staff. Or you go reach out to other companies and you can get discounts for that company you want a sponsorship from for their staff. It's just things that you can do to add benefit to the offer. And then by the end of it, you've got half a page to a full page of dot points that these companies are going to get out of sponsoring you. So that's where fighters need to think outside the box in terms of their offer. But like I said, we don't want to keep any secrets from anyone. We want to help everyone build up. But that's pretty much one of the main things is how to structure an offer. Yeah.
Okay. First of all, Jake, I'm on episode 92, and I wish I had you on episode 1. Leverage, because I mean, seriously, like I'm a small little podcast in Toronto, Canada. I got to use things like what you're saying. Like I try some of those things, but I feel also like I blocked myself. But those are some excellent points. You talk about the sponsorships and about getting them and about working hard. Another, I want to say fan question, but this is like troll questions, that I get. But they're like, well, is Jake happy because the cost of living is less in Australia? Now, before you answer, I do want to say that raises the point, though, of, hey, stupid, if you're living in a really expensive area, maybe that's something you need to think about. Like maybe you shouldn't. And I think Kelvin Gastelum recently just left King's MMA in California, Huntington Beach, and he's moved to Arizona. And I think he made mention in an interview about, well, the cost of living is so much cheaper here.
Absolutely. You can't be living beyond your means. If you're like, you shouldn't have big finance on fancy cars, just to give people the impression that you're well off and you have money. Live to you got to live to your means. Don't be going out every night, partying if you can't. It's just simple things like that. So you're absolutely on the money there. And living beyond your means in regards to what you're paying out of your fight purse as well. So for me, if a manager was to come on now with me, and I was to pay them the usual 20% fight purse percentage, I'd probably be paying probably $90,000 to $100,000 a year in management fees. So that means that a manager would have to get me $100,000 worth of sponsorship just to break even.
Yeah, and then you're doing all that work for zero.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So it'd be almost impossible for someone to get me $100,000 worth of sponsorships in a year. And if they can't do it, that means I'm paying them more than I'm getting back. So I'm out of pocket. It's absolutely pointless to me. Doesn't make any sense. So the simple thing for fighters that I'll tell them is, if you're not, whatever you're paying in your fees, if you're not at least getting that back, then sack your manager because you're out of pocket. So if you can't afford, and for me, that's $100,000. that's double my mortgage and then some. So I can funnel that money into something else better. And these are the exact conversations I've had with managers when I've said to them, look, I'm just going to move on because it's not worth me paying this amount of money. That money can go, like I could go traveling all year with that amount of money, for example. Yeah. So even if you can't afford to have a manager and pay them 20%, again, don't live beyond your means and don't pay that. If your gym, this is a bit different because the gym you might get a lot of benefit from the gym. But I mean, if the gym fees are too high, I think in America they charge a percentage of the fights, whereas in Australia we just sort of pay the fees as we go. But I guess if it's at a point where you can't afford the gym fees and it's going to cause you to have to go and work a second job, which is going to inhibit your training even further, maybe consider finding somewhere else that you can train that'll give you a better deal. It's just things you got to think about. If it's really going to limit your ability to reach the highest levels in the sport, is a detriment. So why are you going to stick with it? So there's always other things that people have to think about as well. And the reason I probably am happy, and don't get me wrong, like if the UFC came to me and said, "Hey, we want to pay $1 million for your next fight," I'm not going to say no.
Yeah,
I'm going to take that. You know what I mean? But I'm also not going to complain about what I'm getting paid. And if a fighter is winning from their debut, if they're winning their fights, if they're having 3 fights a year on the base salary, that's enough for a fighter to live off just fighting. And it's the only organization where someone can live comfortably, even with a family. You can live comfortably, and as long as you're winning your fights, obviously. If you're getting bonuses, that's even better again. But it's the only organization where you can solely just train and fight, and not have to worry about working another job or holding pads in a gym and doing PTs.
Right. And 2 things there, Jay. One is, you should be fighting multiple times a year. I always feel like that's a problem online on Instagram. People look at the disclosed pay, which you're saying is wrong anyways, but people will go to a website, they'll see what Jake Matthews made for his last fight, and they'll go, whoa, he should be making more. That's not enough to live on. And it's like, hey, stupid. He's not going to fight 1 time a year. You are supposed to fight 2 to 3, is my understanding. Or, I mean, they're supposed to offer you 2 to 3 fights, right?
Yeah.
And my next question is, because I'm getting in trouble with people online about this, how many times should a champion defend their belt, Jake? Just on a quick little aside here, I'm very annoyed that Aljamain Sterling is saying he's going to wait 8 months to defend his title. I'm like, this is kind of bullshit. And then people are like, no, a champ should only fight once a year. Is that what do you think of that? Not Aljamain per se.
I think they should approach being a champion just the same as you'd approach being a contender. You should be trying to stay active and fight. I mean, obviously, you'd be getting paid. You want to maximize what you're getting paid for starters. Secondly, I think contractually it's like once every 12 months. So, I mean, he's not doing the wrong thing in terms of his contract, but ethically, to start with, giving other contenders the chance to fight for the belt. You don't want to go off tenure. You don't want to go off like, oh, I held the belt for 3 years but only fought 3 times. You want to go, I'd rather hold the belt for a year and defend it 4 times.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's just me. At the end of the day, when it comes to fighting frequently, I guess the training camp and lead up to a fight, it's very taxing on the body. So it's you'd be, if you were to fight 4 to 5 times a year, you would be in training camp nonstop.
Right.
So that's
right.
You know what I mean? With the way I train, I keep a baseline level of fitness, and I train all year round, but I don't have blowouts. So that's why I'll probably, especially now, keeping my weight low, keeping a baseline fitness always, I could probably start fighting more frequently.
You're not on the Patty. You're not on the Patty Pimblett diet.
No, I'm not. No, so that's where it starts to take a big toll on your body. Obviously, dropping that amount of weight multiple times a year. So, but I think fighters are starting to move towards staying lighter. I only walk around 6 kilos above my weight.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah, so I walk into fight week what I am now, and then I just
nice.
Like the last weight cut, I was eating carbs the night before weigh-in, pretty much just eating normally all week, and then yeah, easy cut. I was in the bath for like half an hour, cut weight on weight, and especially like now, obviously I've showcased my boxing, and I've always have been a boxer, but it's my speed and my explosiveness that's gonna be a benefit to me. So obviously, if you're a wrestler, those guys might want to be a bit heavier. But I do think we're seeing a shift. Guys are staying lighter, so we might start seeing guys fight more frequently because, again, the weight cut just won't be as big of a toll on their body.
Yeah. Nice, Jake. And for those listening only on audio, Jake is hitting all the points that I wanted to talk to him about. So I've been throwing up some images as you talk, Jake, because those are the questions I wanted to get to. One question I want to ask you, though, you talked about sponsorships and like how you got to work for whatever, but in your Instagram video, your infamous Instagram video, it said, hey, the UFC gives us sponsorships too. I have never heard of that in my life. Can you explain what you mean?
Yeah, and the fact that UFC don't defend themselves and come out and say, "Oh, we do this and this," I actually respect that. Regardless of how much slack they get, I respect that they don't go out there and obviously they probably don't want to disclose what the fighters are doing. But yeah, it's endorsements through. I think it's a new department that they've got going. It's I think it's athlete development. Athlete endorsement development, something like that. But yeah, they're starting to reach out and give us, these endorsement opportunities with their sponsors and with other big sponsors. And the pays like worlds above anything that you're going to get yourself. So yeah, and like I said, I think I mentioned the amount. I can't remember exactly.
I think you had said $25,000 US.
Yeah, $25,000. The one was 15, one was 10. Yes, $25,000 within the space of like 2.5 weeks. So that was just two endorsements. Just go film. One of them was filming off my phone. So yeah. So the UFC are obviously putting a high ticket to those companies and saying, hey, these are athletes. This is what they're worth, which is good. Maybe it's time that other sponsors take note of that and start offering athletes what they're worth. But I think if anyone wants to throw shade at anything about fight pay, they should be looking at the regional fight shows, especially in Australia. It's terrible at the moment. I was getting paid more when I was 18, which was 10 years ago. I was getting paid more back then than what some guys are getting paid now. And when I say I'm talking about very experienced guys with 15 plus fights, former Australian champions, getting paid $1,000 Australian to fight. It's just I reckon that's criminal, and that's what's really going to hold guys back from being able to get to these bigger promotions. Because if you get kicked in the leg and you get a sore leg for a week, you can't work for a week. Most guys probably make more than $1,000 a week, so you're actually going to be out of pocket. So yeah, I think that's something that I'd like to start helping fighters with is within Australia, especially in the regional scene, is helping them trying to maximize their fight pay as well. Even if it helps them a little bit, then we feel like we've sort of done our job.
Yeah, that's awesome. Reggie, it's so cool because you see these fighters that now grew up young, right? So Jake, you've been in this a long time. You're seeing this. You're a guy who's in it, but has seen it, wants to help back. I feel like the next generation of fighters is greatly going to benefit from like people like you and people that are doing things like you. If a fighter is watching this now, we have tons of amateur fighters, Jake. I love having amateur fighters on our show because we get to kind of meet them when they're young and hungry and, seeing them off on their journey. How do they get in touch with you for that program that you're talking about, like for your management team or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, so we haven't kicked it off yet. Probably about a week. Yeah, we're probably about a week or two away. But I mean, I've put the word out a few times on Instagram, and we've had a very good response. People that want to jump on board. We've got some pros. So we've got two options. It's more for the amateurs, but it's a mentorship and consultancy. Yeah. We're creating a network. We're creating a network of companies within the industry. Things like allied health professionals, supplement companies, gyms and coaches. So we're getting a network together that these fighters will have access to, as well as consultancy with myself and any other fighters that we want to bring on board to the network as well. And then we have the endorsement sponsorship scaling side of things, which is pretty much we'll be active helping fighters get sponsorships while they're with us, but we'll also have course content to show them how to. something as simple as creating an athlete profile, a photo, your name, your record, a little bio, your accolades, things you've achieved. Add that to an email with a sponsorship proposal, and then send it off to sponsors. You know what I mean? So there's ways that, and it seems simple, but it's just things guys don't think about. They'll message a company Instagram, hey, sponsor me, 1 post a week. Company's like, nah, it's not worth it for us. So we want to teach guys how to make an offer that would be silly for a company to refuse, pretty much. So, but yeah, if the guys are interested, just give me a follow on Instagram. Start messaging me now, showing expressions of interest. And yeah, we're pretty much, you know, we've actually got a couple of pros on board with us already, and actually an Australian-based rapper. Yeah,
is it the guy that sang your intro song that I used? The Lizzie? No.
No, it's not Lizzie. No, it's not Lizzie. He's already big. He's already big. This is a young kid from Melbourne.
Oh, nice.
Absolutely incredible. And I just messaged him and said, "Hey man, like you sound amazing." I thought it was like an established artist from America. To be honest, that's how good he sounded. Yeah. And they actually brought up saying, you know, would you mind if we jump on board with you? So he's on board with us now. But we're not going to claim we're going to get guys to the top. You know, we're going to help. We're going to help these guys as much as we can. And we're going to be honest, when we can't help them anymore, when they've reached a point where they've outgrown us, we will help them move on to someone who can help them progress even further. So we're not going to hold them back and make them think we're going to get them to the top and limit anyone. So I think that's the difference. It's by fighters for fighters. And being a fighter, I'm empathetic to these guys and I understand what they need. And the last thing we want to do is hold them back. So that's going to be the difference between management agencies and what we're doing.
Well, that's amazing.
But in saying that, it's up to the fighters to understand that they, you know, if they need the help or not. It's something that hasn't really been done before. So we'll see how the guys react to it. It could take off and be big, or it could just not get any traction. We don't know. All we can do is launch it, offer the help. The main point is that I've been doing this. So I've just hit my stride in regards to for everything from training to fighting to getting endorsements and sponsorships. 10 years of fighting as a professional until I've just hit my sort of peak in all aspects, from fighting and business. So 10 years of trial and error that these guys don't have to go through because I've done it. So that's pretty much that's it. They can go off on their own and learn it on their own and make all the mistakes, which they're still going to make mistakes, or they can try and reduce that learning process by jumping on board with us. Because there is a kind of a blueprint. Like I said, like we said at the start, I've obviously done something right. I've obviously done a lot of things right because I've had, you know, a career that far exceeds, you know, what the average fight length is in the UFC. I've done well with, you know, getting, you know, I've never been a point in my life. We've got Jared Cannonier on camera saying he's broke by his next fight. I've never had a point in my career where I've said, "Oh, I'm broke, I'm struggling," and I've 95% of my career has been with multiple children, family, building a house, you know, living with the family. So all these expenses, most of these fighters live on their own, and they don't have families. So I've managed to be well off with the family and everything. So so we've made the mistakes. If these guys want to fast, there's no shortcuts. But if they want to fast track their you know, like I said, learning process, definitely hit us up. At least just suss us out and see what we're about, and see if it's for you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know for sure I'm going to send over the Slim Reaper. He's an amateur fighter we had on before. I'm going to send over the Slim Reaper. So watch for him. For audio only guests, Jake Matthews can be reached at Jake Matthews UFC on Instagram. So go find you there. Right. I apologize, Jake. I've taken you longer than I thought. Are you okay just for a couple more minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
I mean, I do want to say you're such an eloquent speaker. Another thing that you need to do is you need to do some sort of like motivational speaking or like TED Talks. You know what I mean? Like you got to do something like that for athletes, because I feel like you're good for that. You posted about this was funny on your Instagram. Someone was talking about your next fight, and you're like, nope, that's not true. But you are fighting soon. So more misinformation, Jake. Do you have any idea when you may be fighting next?
It hasn't been announced by the UFC, so we're not supposed to say too much. But I am fighting in December. Later in
Okay, well,
December. I am
late
fighting later in
December?
December in
Okay.
in Vegas. So
Okay,
Nice,
now you blink
nice.
twice when we hit the date. Okay, you just blink twice. Okay, you just that's all. I'm
you guys, you're gonna get me in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. Are
okay.
you okay? Well, are you happy with the fight? Are you happy with the opponent? I know last time you were really happy with your opponent because you're like, hey, this is a guy I'm going to be able to showcase my striking. I'm going to showcase what I'm all about. This opponent, are you happy?
I am. I had an opponent who unfortunately he's not able to make it to the fight. So I've got a new opponent now. But yeah, I mean, we're chasing a ranked guy. I think if I had have waited to fight on the Perth card in February, I think I could have had a ranked opponent, and actually Vicente Luque agreed to fight me on social media in front of everyone, so he can't back down now. But he's on a medical suspension until early next year. And I didn't want to wait. I mean, I've obviously had long layoffs with COVID and other injuries. I've actually had probably more than 2 years off fighting over the course of my career. So I want to stay active, even if it means like I have to fight an unranked guy, which this next one is. A fight's a fight, you know what I mean? Fight's a fight. I get paid the same whether I fight the champ, whether I fight a top contender or whether I fight, an unranked fight, I get paid the same. It's just another notch on the belt. And, if we end up fighting in Perth, we'll be going in with another big win and hopefully another big knockout. So some good momentum behind me.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You talked. Okay, well, we're super excited for that. And Jake, whenever you come on the podcast, we always call you a friend of the podcast, and we'll do updates about your career as we go. Right. So whenever that fight comes up, we will be letting our fans know. You spoke about the importance of social media and how that's going to be important for sponsors. I think that's really key for people. We had one girl on the show. She was on the Ultimate Fighter, the last series, Caitlin Katniss Neal. Okay, out of California. She had something like 500,000 followers. I'm like, what the hell? Like, I didn't know who she was or anything like that. And I look, and then when we had her on the podcast, I'm like, how the hell do you have this many followers? Like, but she was an influencer. She had been doing stuff. She had brands, like she had a clothing brand. She had an app that she works out. She had massive following already.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that really helps. And then obviously then that's going to help her career, like what you're saying. So
Absolutely.
for you, like with your social media and stuff like that, you are saying for young fighters, it's important to build your social media. It's important to build your brand. So I do want to ask your new hairstyle. It's very cool, Jake. And I feel like, see?
It's awesome.
But when it had the cornrows in it at the fight, even the commentators, Israel Adesanya came out, put out a video saying how cool you looked. Like, I feel like you've just not just developed as a fighter, but like just developed as like your brand, like your personal branding. Was it a conscious effort, or is it just like you're like, I need a new haircut?
Not really. So, look, that is who I am, and what I say to people, I said it's very hard to put on a character. It's very tiring, and you have to make sure when the cameras are there that character's on. If you don't have consistency of character, it just looks weird.
Mm-hmm.
If you had Conor McGregor talking all his trash in one video, and then the next video he's a humble, humble normal martial artist, it's not gonna look weird. You're gonna see through it. So you need to have consistency of character for starters. And the easiest way to do that is whatever your natural personality is, just exaggerate it. So obviously I believe what Conor does is natural. I believe he's naturally confident. He's naturally, very macho. When the camera's on, he just exaggerates that. So, if like it's the same if someone's really, it probably doesn't sell as much, but if someone's a really humble person, that's your character. Just keep that consistent. And then with that, also consistency of content on social media. I know all this stuff. I don't do it myself. I could have 10 times the amount of followers I have. I just don't implement it. I put my effort into other business things outside of social media, but yeah, it's just consistency of content. I'd get massive interactions for 2 weeks, and then I'd go MIA for 3 weeks. And then you can see that it's an absolute just dead stop in regards to interactions and getting followers. I've been pretty active on Twitter for the past 3 weeks, and I got like 3,000 followers. yeah, after neglecting it for about 5 years.
Yeah.
and all it is, I didn't have the app for about 5 years, and I was like, I just remembered I got Twitter. I might jump on. And I just posted just motivational quotes off Google. A lot of them I thought up myself, but
all right,
just posting 3-4 times a day, and then it just being consistent, people started following. So it's just consistency of content and character when it comes to social media to grow your brand. If you find a piece of content that gets a lot of interactions, that's obviously what people are after. Try and replicate that style of content, whether it's a photo or if it's a video. People love day in the life type things. People love controversy to an extent. So they just got to find out what works and stick at it. I think they'll get motivated for a few weeks and then they slowly die off. You just got to stick at it.
Yeah, Jake, that is the answer, man. You got to stay consistent. But I like what you're saying too, because for young fighters, look, you got to build your brand. You got to be, and being consistent on social media is also a metaphor for your life, right? Like you got to be consistent with your training, with your eating habits, like with all those things. You have to be consistent and stuff in order to achieve success.
Absolutely. You just pretty much said I have a.
You can tweet that if you want.
Yeah, I might actually. I actually put a tweet up. It's probably the first tweet I put up when I got back onto Twitter, and it was consistency breeds success. So exactly what you just said. And that's all I tell my guys is just if you're consistent at something, like if you're just consistently rocking up to the gym with your bad days, good days, if you're just consistently grinding away at your goal, you'll eventually be successful. And if you're not, you're obviously not consistent. You're doing the wrong things. You're not being disciplined. It's simple, but it's hard at the same time.
100% right.
It's simple, it's simple just to be consistent, but obviously life gets in the way. There's other, it depends on the amount of effort people are willing to put in. But yeah, like I said, it's all a learning curve. And if people want to learn, about all the trial and error that I've gone through, then they can reach out to us and hopefully we can help them. And another big thing is whatever fee that they, in terms of the endorsement scaling side of things, whatever fee they pay us, we will get them back. We will keep working with them until we get that back. So essentially, they're going to get their money back and they're going to learn all of the course content and how to go on from there and get their own sponsors. We have no affiliations to any gyms or any fighters or any management agencies, nothing. We're complete standalone. So we have no affiliations to anyone. We just want to help fighters. So genuinely just want to help guys.
It's funny you say that, Jake, because there's a professional gym that just recently now has created their own management team. I don't want to say the name because I don't want to be rude about it. But when I saw that, I'm like, this is a scam. And I don't like that the gym itself creates their own management team because I'm like, well, now you're controlling every aspect of this person.
Yep.
That seemed weird to me. So I just caught on when you said, hey, we don't have any affiliation to any gym, because I'm like, don't you have to be somewhat separate? Anyways, if it works for you, it works for you. I'm happy. But
that just seems going to lock you into everything, you know what I mean? And like everyone's going to outgrow a gym eventually.
That's what I'm saying, Jake.
I mean, I've moved always amicably, but I've moved gyms, probably my main training gym 4 or 5 times throughout my career. And I can guarantee if I had stayed at any one of those gyms that I moved from, I wouldn't be in the UFC today. So you do outgrow gyms. You do need to progress and move on. It can always be done amicably. It's obviously up to the coach to be on board with making it amicable as well. And then also with management agencies as well, there needs to be some sort of I'm giving away all our secrets, but we need to have some sort of performance clause in a contract. And I've experienced this firsthand, but it was pretty much, I want a performance clause, put down X amount that you've said about 10 times that you're going to get me in our meeting. So put down that dollar amount and put a performance clause. If you don't hit that, I have the right to withdraw from the contract and leave. And they backpedaled and said, oh, no. So, well, that just shows a lack of confidence before I've even signed up with you. So no.
Look at you. That's a good negotiation tactic. I like that. I'm going to steal that one.
It's just, if you're so confident that you can get it, you have no issue putting in a performance clause. If someone wants to write out a contract with us and put a performance clause on what we're offering, I'm more than happy to do it because we will honor it.
Nice.
like
Jake, Reggie's a lawyer, so if
There you go. Okay.
if she gives you the okay on that, then that is
that's awesome.
Jake. We've kept you much longer. Look, we'll normally only go for an hour. We've gone for 45 minutes. Do you want to stick around the last 15 minutes? Are you okay?
Yeah, absolutely. That's fine.
Okay, I want to talk about something ridiculous that happened, though. Okay, so this is the end of the Jake-focused interview. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're amazing, though, Jake. Okay, I want to raise this issue because this happened. I want to show a clip of something that I talked about. Jake. Okay, Jake, did you get this letter from the UFC? This was the one that said you cannot bet on UFC fights?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay, so you actually received it?
Yes.
Okay, so that comes
Did I
out.
read it? That's another story, but
don't worry about it. Don't worry.
Don't tell.
So that comes out and it goes online, and I had it on the podcast and I said, whoa, this is crazy. I think this means something happened. I think maybe something happened.
Yeah.
Okay. The week following, TJ Dillashaw shows up with one arm to fight, loses the fight, and I said this on the following podcast. This is not Reggie in costume. I had a different co-host. Hold on. Chris, I love conspiracies here, my friend. I think they put this out because they knew TJ's team was betting the farm on Aljo.
Man, you got to show me some proof, but I've always wondered what stops stuff like that,
Okay.
Yep.
So because I'm like, wait a second, what are the odds they say you can't bet on your team? And then the next week, TJ shows up with one arm falling out of the socket. I'm like, how many of TJ's freaking teammates and coaches and whatever bet a boatload against him?
Yeah.
And would have made money, right? Everyone calls me an idiot. They say I'm stupid, Jake. But then this week, did you see what happened?
I'm not very up to date.
Jake,
anything from Ray.
Jake, let me educate you, my friend. So what happens is there's a fight that's going on, and it's on the early prelims last week. It's Derek Minner, Minner, and he's fighting a guy. Okay. He's the underdog. He goes out and fights. In the first minute of the fight, he throws a kick. His leg looks like it buckles or something's wrong with his leg. He then throws another left kick. His leg crumbles. He goes to the ground. The other guy beats the crap out of him, like elbows to the head, sustains quite a bit of damage probably. And then the fight gets called off. Well, then the news comes out, Jake. And I'm putting it here. The UFC is to review suspicious betting activity before Nurdembiek's win over Derek Minner. You don't know any of these people, right? Like these aren't your buddies or anything? Okay.
No.
So I'm like, what do you mean they're reviewing suspicious betting activity? Well, then what happens is this guy comes out. I don't know who this is, at Aaron Bronstetter. The UFC fight on Saturday between Derek and Nurdembiek, which ended abruptly, is being investigated by a US-based betting integrity firm after several sports books in multiple states reported suspicious wagering on the featherweight bout. So, Jake, what happens then when you read into it, and there's some articles online, you can see the other guy was a betting favorite at like negative 220. For those that don't understand betting, it means you have to bet $220 just to win $100 on your money. Tons of bets start coming in for these early prelim guys, Jake, that I'm sure the bettors are like, who the hell's betting on this? They're betting, not only that, but they're predicting that he's going to lose in the first round. So then all the bookkeepers and stuff and the websites start to increase the odds. So the odds to bet on the other guy is negative 420. You have to bet $420 to bet up to win 100. And they said the bets were pouring in on this guy. So something happened. And then the fight, and then so like some sites even stopped betting on the fight, whatever, like they just wouldn't even take any more bets. Sure enough, the guy wins in the first round. And so now the question is, did the gym know that this guy was severely injured and let it slip? Or did the teammates let it slip? Or did someone say, hey, look, this dude's going in, he's like going to die. So not die, but he's going to lose, man. He has one leg.
Yeah.
Or did he throw the fight? I don't think he threw the fight. They went to someone for comment on some website here. Hold on. They said they spoke with a source familiar with Minner's camp and said his left knee was absolutely injured going into the fight, end quote. So people knew. And so now there's this huge investigation. I don't know what's going to happen with this guy, but this is exactly what I said was going to happen.
Yeah. You did.
Like,
You're kind of psychic, actually.
I'm telling you. Jake, this guy's dead meat.
It's obviously all speculation, but I think that's all too coincidental.
It's too coincidental. And like, because like, who's betting on early prelim fights? Big money, Jake. Like,
who's watching them? To be, you know.
How dare you, Jake? How dare you?
I did my time fighting early prelims. I remember fighting early prelims in the stadium events, and there's no one in the stadium, let alone watching on TV.
You know who was there, Jake? This guy. Okay, when the UFC comes to Toronto, if I have that ticket for that event, man, I am there while they're setting up. Like,
yeah.
They only come to your damn city like once. Geez Louise, it's like almost like just a couple times a decade. Like, I'm gonna get that ticket. I'm gonna enjoy the hell of it, you know. But so anyway, so this is crazy. I don't know what's gonna happen, but here's the kicker too. The guy that lost, right? So the guy that everybody's betting against, who's injured, he goes to Glory MMA with the famous James Krause, which is this coach, right?
Yeah.
Apparently, this guy is like a big betting guy and has a podcast about betting.
Okay, yeah.
It's not good for the look. I mean, I'm just saying.
It's not.
Doesn't quite look good.
So this makes it look even worse now. And so so he hosts a podcast called the 1% Club, and it's about betting and stuff like that. And apparently he's like it says known sports bettor.
Yeah.
This story cannot get worse for anyone involved.
Yeah. I mean, if I had those facts in front of a jury, I'd be really excited if I.
that's all. Yeah, it's almost beyond all reasonable doubt. You know.
Yeah, like this. I mean, it's crazy. And so Reggie, being a lawyer, like we talked about the contract when we saw it, that letter that Jake didn't read, but it says
I read something about betting, and I was like, I don't bet. I don't gamble anyway.
Okay, but it's not just you. It's you, your team, and others. So it's like it's meant to include like your team, your gym, your coaches, and I think Reggie and I were talking about. I think that also means like your family and friends. Like,
yeah, I think so.
Because if you came home, Jake, and was like, "Hey, man, Steve is busted." And he's been at the gym for months and he's busted and he's still fighting on Saturday. That's pretty crazy. And then your wife goes off and bets the farm against him. Like that's what they're saying they can't do. Now it has to be a UFC, but you know.
Yeah.
I
wonder where the line's drawn. Like if
question.
Like how many relatives?
How many relatives or how many friends deep can it go before you can bet?
Yeah.
Reggie, what is the answer?
Maybe I think maybe these fighters have been going to Thailand too much. Because that's what the Thai coaches. Yeah, I've got friends that will go to Thailand, never done kickboxing before or Muay Thai, and they'll call me and say, "Hey, the Thai coach said I'm really really good," and they're not. You're not. And they're like, "Oh, they want me to fight this weekend." And I'm like, "Yeah, because they're gonna bet against you. You're gonna get pummeled."
Wait, so this really happens. So
this stuff, absolutely.
If
anyone who goes, any Western that goes to Thailand and jumps in a Muay Thai gym, they will ask you to fight that weekend.
Okay, so no, you're not naturally gifted. You are going to be the center ring attraction.
yeah, and they're gonna bet against you. I went there when I was younger, and I was good, so maybe they thought I would win, but they asked me to fight as well. So they'd probably bet against my opponent because I was actually fighting back then. But yeah, so these guys get sucked in, and I've actually a sad story. And actually, Jack Jenkins Aussie guy just recently won on the Contender Series.
Yeah,
Aussie
yeah.
guy. He's got a contract. Yeah. So he mentioned our very good friend Sai went to Thailand, got stitched up with a pretty tough Muay Thai fight. Ended up in a coma. Sorry. So he's been stuck in Thailand for I can't remember now, maybe 3 years on his own. Brain damaged, in a bed because he got stitched up and ended up finding out that the Thai coach bet against him. The coach that put him into the fight. And this is a guy that can box and can kickbox and can fight. So it definitely does happen and can be very dangerous.
So his own coach bet against him, and
the Thai coach,
you just feed him to the Lions, right? You just feed him against some
they did, yeah. So we found that out, and there's a lot of people still actively trying to get him home, but he's been there on his own for in a hospital bed for years and years and years. After just took one sort of last minute Thai fight, and that's it.
Yeah, that is messed up.
Definitely does happen. Definitely does happen.
Yeah, it's funny because those are those crazy stories, and that's where that people are taking fights to pad their record, right? And so if you're on the wrong end of that padding, if you're the person being fed, so this other person can pad their record, that's like dangerous stuff, man.
I think there should be severe charges. It's almost
of course.
Some sort of consequence, if someone's taking steroids and they have that much of an advantage, it becomes dangerous. Mm-hmm. This is not like someone's going to run, fend you off and go score a goal in a football match. Mm-hmm. You're going to get hurt. You get punched and kicked, and limbs could get broken, choked unconscious. It's not
reckless disregard for the athletes. It's
absolutely
like you were saying, you're going to have injuries. You're going to have, potential for, I guess you're not going to probably have liability because that's all been signed away. But it's like we've taken out all of the liability and go nuts. And these people are left with these lifelong injuries or problems because you let them go in there and they signed their rights away, before they went in.
Yep. And for probably $500.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or less. And that's the thing. And so, and in a way that brings it back to this whole issue with this minor kid. It's like his gym, like if you knew that this guy is that injured, regardless of whether this whole betting thing is true or not, but it has to be, because who's betting on the early prelims? But that it brings into case, right? Like the gym that's letting you go out there and fight compromised and injured, right? Like unless you're in, I guess this is a bad news scenario. You're either in on it and you're making money off this guy's loss, which is illegal and bad, blah, blah, blah. Or you're just a totally negligent gym or coach or whatever, and you're letting this guy go out and get severely hurt. Because I'm telling you, he took a lot of damage. After he fell to the ground, Jake, the guy was on top, elbowing him to the head, and he's kind of blocking, and the ref is like kind of letting it go. And I was like, holy cow, like the ref had to have seen that his leg crumpled. So at the very least, you might stop it.
Maybe the ref bet on him to win.
Oh God, no! How deep?
It's a rabbit hole now. It's a conspiracy. They're all working together.
Inception. We're all going to be like drawing like those apps.
Yeah.
No, it's whispering. He's like, "Hey, I'll bet money on you. Get up."
Now.
He didn't get the tip that this guy was injured. But it's like, so you're right though, Jake. It's either there's a betting problem here, or the coaches and stuff were letting this guy go out. And again, I love Glory MMA. I like James Krause. I've met some of his fighters on this show. I wouldn't like to know that this is real, but geez Louise, it's a bad story. But
yeah, for me, I look at everything I do is it comes down to I look at things morally. Like I just couldn't do something like that as a coach or as a fighter. You know what I mean? It's like, even if you win and got big money, it's just dirty money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've been offered endorsements and things that I don't agree with, and promoting like crypto things that I think may potentially be a scam. I don't know 100%, but they just don't seem right, and I refuse to pump them out. I don't want people losing money for something that I've been promoting, and it's just So I don't know. I take a very ethical standpoint on everything. I guess I don't know. Not everyone is the same.
No, Jake. Okay. The only other
No,
Australian.
I guess I know they're not the same.
The only other Australian or New Zealand person I think that I know is Janae Harding, who was on this podcast. Do you know Janae Harding?
Don't believe I've met her. I'm not in the same vicinity as her, but we haven't really met and talked. But I do know her. Yes.
But she was on the podcast, and it's so funny, Jake, because now I'm just feeling like that part of the world. You guys are all very nice, very humble, very good people. Like Janae was on this podcast, and I just got out of it that she was like just, like the salt of the earth. Like she's just such a good person in general. But you're giving off that vibe too, Jake, even though you're a killer in the cage.
You're a man with principles. You kill in the cage, but man with principles outside.
You don't have your principles at the end of the day. What do you have?
Nothing.
Everything, all this materialistic stuff, you can't take it when you go. You can't take it with you. You know what I mean? But I think. How am I gonna not anger Australians? I'll say this. I think it's more to do with the fact we're martial artists than to do with the fact that we're New Zealand or Australian. Because I know some arsehole Aussies.
Oh.
I mean, without. I don't want to get cancelled either. With the state of the world over the last few years, a lot of true colours came out.
Yes. Okay, I hear what you're saying. I got you.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So I think I can attribute to the fact that we're martial artists is why we're so humble, and that doesn't necessarily mean that all martial artists are the same, but generally, I mean, and this is again coming to someone's character, Kevin Lee, for example. Probably has the stigma of being one of the biggest assholes in MMA. Without a doubt, the nicest guy I've had the pleasure of fighting against.
Oh.
Yeah. Immediately after the fight, just could not be more apologetic for trash talking. He just said it's all just hyping it up. That's all it was. Every time I've seen him afterwards, he'll run up, give me a massive hug, always talk to me.
Nice.
Me and Johnny Case, we fought, beat each other up. And then a few months later, I was flying him out to Australia to live with us and train with us, become good mates.
Wow.
Emil Meek, we had a good fight. We still message each other back and forth, always wishing each other the best. It's So vast majority of martial artists have that kind of character to them.
That's good, man.
It's just, I don't know, with martial arts, it's either if you have an ego, either the ego is going to go. So in regards to a gym, the ego is going to go, or you're going to go. You can't have both. You're getting beaten up every day. Your ego is going to go, and you're going to get humbled.
Yeah, Jake, this has been the coolest podcast. So unexpected. I knew that you were going to be a good talk because I love the topic. Like we talk about this a lot in the fighter pay and stuff like that. It's always something that's debatable. I like being able to talk about the betting thing, but man, everywhere you went with this, the management team, it's more, I would say it's more like a mentorship you're offering, right? Like more so than a management. It's like a mentorship, Well,
the last thing we're going to call it is management. We're not taking a percentage of anything that we get for fighters. No, nothing. We're not taking any fight purse. We're not taking any percentage of sponsorships we get for them. We'll have a fee because obviously we have people working for us.
Yeah.
And we'll grow that. We'll grow the amount of people that are working for us and bring more experts in, from like marketing experts to other UFC fighters. We've got multiple people in media, photographers, videographers that can help add benefit and so obviously, like, I'm limited in what I know about media and social media. We have people that are experts in that field that can help fighters, and that's what that network's about. So yeah, it's definitely not a management agency. It's just mentorship, consultation on everything to do with fighting. From if you've got a question about weight cutting, message me. I'm going to be replying personally, and any other athlete that's on Telegram, it's going to be them replying personally. I do this anyway.
Awesome.
I'll probably spend 2-3 hours a week getting requested messages on Instagram about just young kids sending me videos, hitting the bag, asking me about weight cutting, even things being a young dad who fights, how to balance that. I get questions about that a lot. So we've just taken that. I do it anyway. So we're just turning it into a business and hoping to expand it and just get our reach as far as we can in regards to helping fighters.
Awesome.
Jake, man, we wish you all the best in your fighting career, but also in all the endeavors that you do, man. You're the coolest dude.
Yeah.
Reggie, we're hitting time. Is there anything you want to say before we go, Reggie?
No, but I'm just gonna embarrass Jake. Like, you are like a total example of positive masculinity right here. Like, I'm all for this. Like, seriously. So thank you. It's been great. I love this.
Nah, thank you for that. That's that's great to hear that.
Yeah, Jake, thank you so much. Jake, before I let you go, who should we have on the podcast? Someone that you know that's cool like you.
Someone that's cool. Are you looking to get like an Aussie or someone from this side of the world?
Doesn't matter. Anybody. Yeah, sure. Like, who would be a good person to talk to? Someone fun to talk to.
A good fun person, honestly, if you can reach out, would be Emil Meek.
Done.
He's just an absolute character. That'll top this show for sure.
No. How dare you?
He's just full of energy, so he'd be a good one to get. In regards to getting another Aussie, want someone who's got good energy? Josh Coolabell.
All right, done.
And he'd be good to talk to because he's actually just picked up. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but he's got something going on with KFC in regards to like an endorsement or a sponsorship. So yeah, so he's obviously onto something there as well. He's full of energy, so he'd be good to get on.
Awesome, man. Jake, I will reach out to those people. Guys, if you join the podcast for the first time because of Jake Matthews, thank you so much for joining the podcast. We have tons of episodes in our backlog that you should check out. This is episode 92, so you got 91 that you can catch up on. Next week on the podcast, Reggie, I said that I was going to try and get him, and we did. We are having the Beast Boy, Mike Davis, come on the podcast. Jake, you'll like this for entrepreneurship. Mike Davis is the guy that was selling his cornerman spot for $10,000.
Ah, yes. Yep.
So
if he's got a free spot, maximize that money.
Yeah, man, sell it. So we're gonna have
as long as it's not going to be a detriment to your fight. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
As long as it's not going to inhibit your fighting ability or throw you off mentally, why not?
Yeah. It can't be some crazy idiot. But
no, they gotta sit in the back, be quiet, and just watch. It's just a front row seat, pretty much.
Yeah, it's a front row seat, is being able to go backstage, meet all the people, like be there for the signing, the whole thing, right? So it's a cool opportunity. And for $10,000, man, there's some loaded people out there that could throw that around no problem.
The most expensive quiet time you'll ever pay for. You just be quiet.
You just sit there. Guys, that's it for the podcast. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. Jake, you are a true friend of the podcast, man. In your future, I do hope we get to have you back on the podcast one day. All the best to you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. My pleasure.
All right. Have a good one, guys. Take care, Reggie.
Bye.